What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. We hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you are ready for the regular season. We are so close, we can taste it, but there is one more preseason game in between us and football that ultimately matters as far as wins and losses are concerned, and it will happen this Sunday at AT&T Stadium against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's right, the Cowboys will take on Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence, although QB1 for the Jaguars probably won't play, because that's how preseason rolls when you get to the final game of the period. It's generally a lot of backups against a lot of backups. Sure, we might see some things. We have some things that we definitely want to see, and really we just have to make it through. The ultimate goal, no injuries. But on the subject of things we want to see, we are here to discuss that. It is our preview show after all. Please do subscribe here to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel so you get access to all of our wonderful programming. First thing that we want to see is some quarterback action. Now, it remains to be seen exactly how much Cooper Rush is going to play. This is something that Tom Ryle, our special guest, and I got into in our conversation that we're going to show you in just a moment. If the Cowboys don't play Cooper Rush at all, it will seem to be a strong indication that they are rolling with him as their QB2 on the season. But we really need to see some sustainable quarterback play from anyone. Right now, the Cowboys seemingly are going into the season with Cooper Rush as the team's backup, who he has been before. Garrett Gilbert has really conceded that job over the course of the preseason, which is amazing given the fact that he had all of this time to cement himself as the primary backup to Dak Prescott. Ben DiNucci is what he is at this point in time, but with roster cutdowns coming next Tuesday, by the way, we will have a live roster cuts reaction show here on the channel starting at 2 p.m. Central Time on Tuesday. We will also have a 53-man roster prediction available, a 53-man roster video prediction available for you. I don't know, words are hard. We'll be dropping a video where we're predicting a 53-man roster on Sunday evening after the game, after our post-game show. And right now, Cooper Rush is QB2, and there's no other quarterback on the roster, in my mind at least. We need somebody to come out and impress us and potentially change that. Second thing we want to see is some INTs. You want to see these young Cowboys secondary players show up. There's a lot of reason to believe in Kelvin Joseph, to believe in Nashawn Wright, to believe in Israel Mukuamu, who was activated off of the COVID list. Great to see that. But we haven't seen that translate in games. We've seen a lot of great plays in practices, in training camp, and those are obviously great things. I don't want to take away from that, but we have yet to see one of those interceptions occur against another team. Granted, this is going to be backups against backups. So the quality of football is going to be down a little bit, but this team is going to be depending on these players, not to a hugely strong degree here in 2021, but definitely to a significant degree. Kelvin Joseph, second-round pick. Nashawn Wright, third-round pick. Israel Mukuamu, somebody who the Cowboys clearly believed in, brought him in, immediately flipped him over to safety, and hopefully those results pan out. Show us something. I don't think if we don't see anything, it's worth panicking over, but it would be very nice to get a boost of confidence from the young secondary players, especially as they get ready for their first regular season. Now, the final thing that I want to see has nothing to do with offense, and it has nothing to do with defense, but it has everything to do with special teams. The Cowboys activated Greg Zuerlein from the physically unable to perform list this week. He is now the kicker for the team. There's no Hunter Nicewander. There's no Lareem Harulahula. It is all Greg Zuerlein all the time. He went 5 of 8 during his first practice since being activated, and that wasn't necessarily a reason to panic either, but we have not seen him, and the regular season starts in less than 2 weeks. The NFL is a dramatic sort of thing. There are so many games, as we all know, that ultimately come down to last-second field goal attempts, to different sorts of things, to different sorts of options, and you want to have somebody who you feel confident in, and we want to start off the season on a strong note. Greg Zuerlein is John Fossil's guy. We know that. We've seen that for a very long time now. So Greg Zuerlein, go out, give us confidence, make all your kicks, field goals, extra points included, and we will all sleep a lot better when it is all said and done. Now, there are some other things that we want to see, some things that we just kind of have to think about as the preseason game, as the preseason ultimately wraps up. So for a proper discussion on that, we went to one of the very best in the business, Tom Ryle, who you can see at bloggingtheboys.com. You can listen to on the Blog of the Boys podcast network, and you can see right now here on our preview show. Pleased to be joined by the one, the only, the legendary, supremely handsome, all talented in every single capacity that is measurable in all of human existence. You know him from blogoftheboys.com. You hear him on Riled Up on the Blog of the Boys podcast network. It is Tom Ryle, the GOAT. Tom, how goes it?
Oh, it's going well. Got one last preseason game coming up, which is good news because after that, it's real games coming.
That's right. The Dallas Cowboys host the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday at AT&T Stadium at noon. It will feel like a normal Sunday. We're just a couple of weeks away from that being a normal rhythm for the Cowboys, although playing at noon is not necessarily something that happens all too often. But it is the case here. It is the final preseason game, as you mentioned. And so it's been an interesting preseason because it's been the first with only 3 games for most of the NFL. Obviously, the Cowboys have played 4. There is the upcoming bye week in the preseason. Thanks for that. Who knows? We'll see. So that being said, Tom, there are different priorities in this game for the coaching staff and everybody involved. What are your priorities? What do you want to see from the Cowboys? What has to happen on Sunday against Jacksonville?
Oddly enough, after I was thinking that the offense was largely set, suddenly there's 3 looming questions that I'm looking for real heavily. One is Cooper Rush's apparent ascension to be the QB2 real, or is it a mirage?
Would you play him if you're running the coach, if you're on the Cowboys coaching staff? Would you play him? Because I think there's a school of thought, if he's your QB2, this is effectively the 4th preseason game in terms of what we've traditionally known it to be. He would seemingly hold a higher level of value. I could see a school of thought saying I wouldn't put him out there. I mean, do you subscribe to that, or you want to see it?
I think that's an indicator. If Garrett Gilbert comes out and starts, that doesn't mean he's moved back into the good graces of the coaches. If they protect Cooper Rush, that's a pretty good sign that they're considering him as the backup to Dak Prescott, although his biggest challenge at that point would be whoever gets waived out there in the rest of the NFL. So literally I'm looking to see who takes the field for how many snaps, because I think fewer snaps is probably a better sign for whoever the backup quarterback is.
That makes sense. Okay, so that's one of 3 things you said that you were paying attention to on the offensive side of the ball. I imagine another one is the tackle situation.
No, because we wouldn't find out anything if you're referring to La'el Collins' apparent stinger.
Well, what I mean, though, is the depth behind him. Ty Nsekhe came out in the Hall of Fame game, did not play well, and we all started to have some questions about him. And I don't feel like any of that has really been appeased. I don't feel like we've grown any level of confidence in Ty Nsekhe over the course of the entire preseason. And so swing tackle is still an issue.
Well, I think Nsekhe was doing better. He went out in, I think it was the 2nd game he got injured, but he had some very good snaps before that. It will be interesting to see who they line up because I do think they are still trying to evaluate that. No, what I was actually looking at is all of a sudden we've got a competition to be the 3rd string running back if the Cowboys indeed carry a 3rd string running back. That's because
Rico Dowdle placed on injured reserve this past week, and Jaquan Hardy, who I don't ever need to see put on a contact again, but is in the running for that. Do you think, though, I don't think he's not competing with anybody, Jaquan Hardy, right? If the team carries 3...
There's another back. I just don't know if he's actual competition.
That's what I'm saying, though. I think that if they carry 3 running backs, I think the 3rd is Jaquan Hardy. I think what he's competing for is the idea of 3 running backs. We've seen this team carry only 2, certainly plenty of times in the Ezekiel Elliott era. It's not like there are a lot of snaps for an RB3 on this team. There are barely snaps for Tony Pollard. And so it really is, in a theoretical sense, Jaquan Hardy versus Nick Ralston, because I think we generally think this team's going to go deeper on the defensive side of the ball when it comes to the construction of their roster. And so you can really only take one of those 2.
Yeah, I think that's very true. And it's entirely conceivable that they don't take either of them, that they, first off, they could sign a running back off the waiver wire or claim somebody off the waiver wire. But I think it's maybe more likely that they just go with Elliott and Pollard. And if they need a lead blocking back, they'll bring a tight end into the backfield and they just roll like that. Like you said, likely they're going to go light on defense light on offense as far as numbers, just because they've got so many more known quantities on offense. A lot more unknown on defense, which could push you to carry a little bit higher number because, you're just looking to keep throwing stuff at it and hoping that you get enough that stick.
Yeah, I think the last point for me on offense is Sean McEwen. We certainly think at least that Tristan Hill and Chauncey Golston are candidates to open the season on injured reserve. So they'll be on the 53-man roster when it's initially finalized. They'll be put on IR. I wonder if Sean McEwen is a candidate for that. And so you have to wonder maybe that opens up the necessary spot for Nick Ralston, hypothetically. Again, we're dealing with something way past this game.
Yeah.
Do you think, getting to the defensive side of the ball, this is really more of a special teams based question? The great Bob Sturm wrote about this week at The Athletic. I know that inspired you to write something at bloggingtheboys.com. He mentioned Azur Kamara when it came to players who had played on all the platoons within special teams groups lately. And so do you think he has a legitimate shot at making this roster? And if you don't, what would be necessary for him to show on Sunday for him to ultimately prove his spot?
I don't know what he'd have to show on Sunday, because I think they're looking at him as a work in progress as an edge rusher.
Mm-hmm.
They would just like to bring him up to speed as much as possible there as an emergency thing. But it's what he does on special teams, and I don't know if he's going to get enough snaps doing that to actually tilt the scale one way or another. That may be the kind of a decision that was made in the dress rehearsal game. If he was indeed a starting special teamer, as
right.
Bob Stern put it, then they may have already made that call, and they may already have 2 or 3 of those guys locked in. And so I'm not too sure we're going to be able to see very much of him. One thing that I think is still up in the air is whether there's going to be a 6 wide receiver. And, is that going to be down to Fehoko and
Malik Turner?
Yeah. That's, I'm thinking they're only going to go with 5 wide receivers at least and put 1 or 2 guys. I would prefer to see 2 wide receivers on the practice squad if they do that, just from a depth standpoint. Just like I think they're going to probably be looking at Jaquan Hardy for a practice squad slot, and maybe do that with Nick Ralston as well, so they kind of defer the decision on fullback for a while.
Yeah, the way they shuffle things is obviously very crafty. We've seen them sort of exploit is not the right word, but take advantage of roster loopholes already with certain players that they've placed on injured reserve and kind of stashing them for the future. I do think another player to watch, to jump back, this is just kind of a, jumping back and forth, that's what this game's all about, is Luke Gifford. When we had Francis Bernard on the show a few months ago, he spoke about how one of his goals this season was to really improve on special teams. That's something that John Fossil had really impressed upon him. And I think his injury situation has really opened the door for Luke Gifford. Especially after the draft. After the draft, we all wrote off Jalen Smith and Leighton Vander Esch. So that really wrote off the likes of Luke Gifford. And if Francis Bernard was going to be your special teams ace of a linebacker, I don't know that there was going to be that spot for Luke Gifford. But Luke was in the mix of players that Bob Stern wrote about that you touched on. And it does seem like he might ultimately be the beneficiary of Francis Bernard being out for a little bit.
Yeah, I always was a little hesitant about saying the Cowboys were going to roll with just 5 linebackers if you consider special teams.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I kind of like the idea of when I did a roster projection, I had 4 special teams players using the 3 that Bob Sturm had and C.J. Goodwin.
And you're talking in addition to your specialists that are, at least for now, Greg Zuerlein, Brian Anger, and Jake McQuay. So it's 7 total special teams players as a whole.
Yeah, I just created a basket for them so that you could kind of separate who's actually going to count on offense and defense. Right. These guys would only be used in an emergency situation, except on special teams.
Like we saw Darian Thompson this past week with all the safeties on the COVID list.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Goodwin took some snaps at cornerback just because of the same thing. They got short, and he had to be pressed into service in a game. They want someone who's not going to just be completely lost out there, but that's not the main reason you have him on the team. You have him out there running special teams so you don't have to risk one of those key offensive or defensive players. At least that's the way I think about it.
Yeah, I loved what Sturm wrote about this. I loved what you wrote about it as well, Tom. But I loved how Sturm put it in that if you're not treating it as a side of the ball that you have to devote players to and devote attention to, you're not doing it properly. Because if you're just treating it as this kind of flim-flam sort of way, you are treating it as this like, this isn't going to be the reason we lose sort of lens, but you should be looking at it as a this is the reason why we win sort of thing. And it does feel like John Fossil has brought that sort of disposition. It feels like he's brought every player who's ever played for him before, but it feels like he is really approaching this. And we've seen a lot more attention placed on special teams, at least in the era of John Fossil, which is very young. Your last important thing, Tom, that we have to see, one thing that if we do not see this come Sunday night, you're going to toss and turn all night.
If we don't see Ben DiNucci convince this staff that he doesn't belong on the roster, I am really going to have a hard time sleeping.
So to be clear here, because you worded that interestingly, you're saying you need to see Ben DiNucci prove that he should not be on the team. To explain where Tom's coming from, I think, is Tom knows that we have seen the Cowboys hold on to things for too long and really kind of, believe that they can change things. And I think you're saying, Tom, that we need to see Ben DiNucci prove without a shadow of a doubt, you can't change me. I'm who I am. Let me go and move on.
Yeah, sign yourself somebody to the practice squad that gets cut, that gets waived somewhere else.
If they want to put him on the practice squad, I really don't care. But he should not be on the 53-man roster.
Yeah, come on, there's no chance. I mean,
who was on it last year? I mean, there's technically a chance.
If he shows up on the 53-man roster, I am going to have to wonder if I'm just wrong about everything. Like maybe Carson Wentz is actually a good quarterback. I mean, that's how mind-boggling it would be. No, I don't know that they should even mess with him on the practice squad.
Yeah.
They say he's got this great value as a scout team quarterback because blah, blah, blah. I think you can find somebody that's good and could offer at least a scintilla of hope that they might be able to come in and play a few snaps for you without just, throwing a game away right there. And I don't mean to, we talk about this. Remember, this is a guy out there trying his heart, putting his heart on the line.
Sure.
And I don't want to denigrate him. And, I hope that he has a great life and things go well for him. I just don't think his future is playing quarterback with the Dallas Cowboys. And I don't mean to say I want to see him throw 3 more interceptions. I just want to see him.
You want to see him protect the Cowboys from themselves because we know that they have a tendency to harm themselves in that sense. Nowhere else on the internet do you get people dropping the word scintilla when talking about the Dallas Cowboys final preseason game. He is Tom Ryle. You can read him at bloggingtheboys.com. You can listen to him on Riled Up every Thursday on the Blogging the Boys podcast network with Roy White. You can see him from time to time here on the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. You can follow him on Twitter at TomRyleBT. Tom, you are the GOAT. Thank you so much for joining us. Your last word before we move on.
Hey, football is almost upon us.
Well said, Tom. Thanks a lot. Big thanks to Tom Ryle for taking the time to join us here on the preview show. Lots of important elements to this game when you think about it. And obviously, it's a situation where it's kind of hard to predict, and it's just what the preseason is when you get to this point in time. There's a lot of roster spots up for grabs around the NFL. There's only a select few up for grabs on the Cowboys, even on the Jaguars. This is an important week to pay attention to a lot of the players being cut because the Cowboys might have somebody on their team a week from now that is not on their team in their present moment. But a lot of players have really impressed, a lot of new additions. And so hopefully if the Cowboys do bring in some players, they obviously have an impact right away. And 3 players that have joined the Cowboys this year, one very recently, have really shined so far. It is time to head into the film room with Matt Minnick here on the Blogging the Boys preview show. And Matt has some things to say, I think, that are going to get you excited about the new Cowboys and the impact that they can have on the team in the regular season.
As the preseason nears its end, we likely won't see many of the Cowboys' top players this week against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but there are a handful of players who have already shown plenty. These are the top 3 Cowboys additions coming into the 2021 regular season. Last week, we finally got to see Malik Hooker in a Cowboys uniform, and plays like this show why he could be a huge acquisition at safety. He is covering the deep middle of the field, but when he sees the quarterback targeting the dig route, he breaks with great speed. This was a good read and an excellent tackle, and it shows that he still has the same burst that he had prior to injury. Expect big things from Hooker with the Cowboys in 2021. With injury concerns on the interior defensive line, rookie defensive tackle Osa Odighizuwa has become critical to the team's success in 2021. Fortunately, he has impressed this preseason and is looking like one of the team's top additions. Last week, the Texans decided to go for it on 4th and 1, but Odighizuwa was not having it. Watch as he splits the backside double team and makes the tackle in the backfield. This was a fantastic stop on 4th down. But of course, there is another rookie who is rightfully getting all the buzz in Dallas, and that is linebacker Micah Parsons. It's only preseason, but defensive coordinator Dan Quinn is already doing an incredible job of moving Parsons around to make the most of his skill set. In this first clip, Parsons is standing up on the strong side edge. On the snap, he strikes the tight end, pushing him deep into the backfield. He holds the edge, but when the running back cuts inside, he is easily able to disengage and make the tackle. Awesome play. On the very next play, he lines up over the center. His speed off the snap puts pressure on the center and opens up the twist for guess who? Odighizuwa. Odighizuwa has an open lane to the quarterback, who is forced to scramble. Just then, Parsons breaks free of his block and chases the quarterback down, forcing him to get rid of the ball to avoid the sack. This was an excellent play by both rookies and could be a great sign of things to come in 2021. The regular season is almost here. Keep an eye out for these 3 newcomers who could be difference makers for the Cowboys defense.
Thanks a lot to Matt for taking us into the film room, showing us some things to be positive about. Malik Hooker, Osa Odighizuwa, Micah Parsons, if they all have the impact that we think they can on the Cowboys this season, the defense is definitely going to be much better. I doubt we see a lot of them, though, in this particular preseason game because, again, it's the final preseason game. And so it's going to be a lot of down-the-roster guys, but it is still going to be something that you want to watch. And speaking of watching the game, how do you watch? We get this question every week, so we think it's important to let you know. This game is going to be available on a national level. The game starts at 12 p.m. Central Time against the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously taking place at AT&T Stadium. So if you have NFL Network, you can watch it there. You'll obviously get their broadcast. If you are a local Dallas Cowboys fan, you're in the DFW area or any local markets, you will get the CBS 11 coverage, which this week features Michael Irvin on the call as well. So look forward to that. You can always listen to the game on 105.3 The Fan, the home of the Dallas Cowboys. Lots of options to get to. We will have highlights the day after the game. So on Monday, we will put together every single play that is worthy of mention. We'll show it to you here on the YouTube channel. We have a lot of stuff coming out in the next couple of days, by the way. So on Sunday, as soon as the game is over, we have our live post-game show. We do these after every Dallas Cowboys game. So you can come join us. We can sit, we can chat, bring some food, bring some drink, whatever you want. We'll talk about the game, what we liked, what we didn't like. That's your first bit of action on Sunday. Sunday evening, we will put together the thing I mentioned earlier that I messed up, the 53-man roster prediction video. I will go through a 53-man roster, the players I think are going to make it. Hopefully you agree. If not, we can have a fun conversation about it. On Tuesday, the NFL has mandated that every single team has to get down to 53 players by 3 p.m. Central Time. We are going to go live right here on the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. 1 hour ahead of that, we'll discuss anything that has happened up to that point. We'll discuss things that are happening while we are on live. And then, of course, at 3 p.m. Central Time, we will discuss the 53-man roster that the Cowboys have set. We will also talk about notable cuts around the league and talk about players the Cowboys should be pursuing or putting in a claim for. The regular season is just about here, my friends, and thanks for choosing us. Thanks for enjoying it with us. We're very, very, very excited. I'm RJ Ochoa. You know me, of course, from Blog on the Boys. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at RJ Ochoa. My DMs are open if you have any comments, questions, or points of criticism, hopefully from a constructive standpoint. If you'd like, you can also email me, rj.ochoa@sbnation.com, if 280 characters is not enough for you. It's impossible for you to not have a great weekend because Cristiano Ronaldo is back home with Manchester United. That's right. I'm very excited about it. But thanks for taking the time to join us, everybody. We'll see you after the game.